Block their numbers, I said to my assistant, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. All of them. My mother, my father, my brother. Anyone with the last name Lawrence. She nodded without question, but I caught the flicker of curiosity in her eyes. For 7 years, she'd worked as my right hand at Bella's restaurant group, yet she knew nothing about the family I'd left behind 22 years ago. The letter had arrived yesterday, a handwritten invitation addressed to my corporate office. The flowing script too perfect, too deliberate. Dear Alice, it read, we're writing to let you know that in 2 weeks there will be a family reunion at your brother Michael's newly purchased house. All the closest relatives will be there, and we think it's the right thing for you to come to. The right thing. 22 years of silence, and now they were experts on the right thing. I walked to my office window on the 20th floor, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The restaurant empire I'd built stretched across the horizon, 12 locations visible from where I stood. Miss Lawrence? My assistant's voice pulled me back. Are you sure? Your mother called again this morning. She sounded desperate. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. She's always desperate when she wants something. Flashback, the black sheep. The memories flooded back like they'd been waiting just beneath the surface. I was always the odd one out in my family. Michael was the golden child, handsome, funny, outgoing, and the absolute center of attention. Everyone adored him. Michael got that charm from my side, my father John would boast, while my mother Carol beamed beside him. I once overheard her tell my aunt, some children just shine naturally, with a glance in my direction that made it clear I wasn't one of them. I was just Alice, the mouse. Quiet, shy, awkward Alice, who preferred books to people and silence to chaos. My father was a high school football coach who couldn't understand a daughter who had no interest in sports. My mother was an elementary school teacher who found my introversion embarrassing, ironic given how many quiet children must have passed through her classroom. Why can't you be more like your brother? Became the soundtrack of my childhood. I remember my 10th birthday party. Mom had reluctantly organized it, inviting my classmates with the promise of cake and games. Halfway through, news came that Michael's baseball team had made the finals. My parents didn't hesitate. They announced they had to leave to support him. Most guests followed, eager to witness Michael's triumph. I sat alone at a table with deflating balloons and a half-eaten cake, my mother calling over her shoulder. You understand, don't you, honey? This is important for your brother's future. I understood perfectly. I always had. Flashback, the breaking point. When Michael graduated high school, the entire extended family pitched in for his college tuition. 2 years later, it was my turn. Despite living in Michael's shadow, I'd earned a full academic scholarship, something I'd achieved entirely on my own. The night I received my acceptance letter, I rushed home, heart pounding with excitement. That's nice, honey, my mother said, barely glancing up. But we've already filled out Michael's alumni legacy forms. My father looked uncomfortable. About that scholarship, we might have missed the deadline for some paperwork. The financial aid office called, but we were busy with Michael's fraternity weekend. The scholarship had been rescinded because my parents hadn't submitted the required documentation. They'd simply forgotten. You need to find a job and support yourself, my mother added. The next day, I got a job as a waitress at Sam's Diner. My cousins started showing up regularly, sitting in my section. Look at loser Alice, Brian would say loudly. Jennifer would laugh. She'll be doing this forever. After they left me a 5-cent tip with career advice. Be someone else, written on the receipt. I'd had enough. That night, I told my parents I was moving out. That's probably for the best, honey, Mom actually smiled. I remember standing in my bedroom at 2 a.m., packing everything into 3 cardboard boxes. As I walked out, Mom called. Don't forget to let us know your new address. I never did, and they never asked again. Flashback. Elena's kitchen. The apartment I moved into was shared with 2 waitresses, Sarah and Melissa. I got hired at Bella's, run by Elena Garcia, a Mexican immigrant who built her restaurant from nothing after arriving as a teenager. I started as a dishwasher, scrubbing pots late into the night. But even as I worked, I watched Elena cook. Her hands moved like they were dancing, each motion deliberate and meaningful. The kitchen was her stage, and she conducted it like a symphony. 6 months in, Elena called me into her office. Alice, I've been impressed with your work ethic. You're the most reliable person I have. Thanks, I mumbled, unused to praise. I want to make you head waitress. And have you ever thought about restaurant management? The community college has courses. I'd work around your class schedule. For the first time in years, someone believed in me. One day, Elena handed me a knife and vegetables. Today you learn to chop, she said, adjusting my grip. Cut with emotion. With emotion? I echoed, confused. All that anger inside you. I see it. Put it into the knife. Transform it. She demonstrated swift, precise motions. Not destructive. Creative. I began to chop, channeling years of rejection and neglect. By the time I finished, my breathing had steadied and the vegetables were perfectly diced. Elena nodded. Now you understand. We take our pain and make something beautiful from it. That lesson became my philosophy, not just in cooking, but in life. The holiday season arrived, bringing unexpected nostalgia. Despite my better judgment, I called home on December 15th. Hi, Mom. It's Alice. Oh, hello, dear, she said, distracted. I heard laughter in the background. I was wondering about Christmas plans. I thought maybe I could. We're spending Christmas at Aunt Susan's, she interrupted. Michael will be home from college and everyone's excited to see him. Could I join you there? There was a pause. Well, to be honest, Alice, no one really asked about you. I think it would be awkward if you showed up now. I hung up and cried for an hour. Then I dried my tears and made a decision. I was done reaching out. If they didn't want me, I wouldn't waste any more energy wanting them. The next day at work, Elena noticed my red eyes but didn't pry. Instead, she handed me the closing shift for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Double pay, she said. I figured you might want it. Thanks. I don't have anywhere else to be. Their loss, she said simply. Flashback, the rise. I threw myself into work and studies. The restaurant management courses opened my eyes to a world I hadn't known existed. I discovered I had a head for numbers, a talent for organization, and surprisingly, a knack for leadership. By the time I turned 36, I was the general manager of Bella's with my own office and a salary that let me upgrade to a one-bedroom apartment. Then came the day that changed everything. Elena called me into her office, looking troubled. My aunt died, she said. Left me some money, about $200,000. I'm sorry for your loss, I said. She waved her hand. We weren't close, but now I have this money and I don't know what to do with it. I waited. I've been thinking about expansion, she continued. Opening a second location, maybe a third. What do you think? I didn't hesitate. I think it's a great idea. I could help you draft a business plan. It's what I've been studying. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. Drafting a business plan, market analysis, projections, staffing needs, location scouting. When I presented it to Elena the next day, she was stunned. This is professional grade work, Alice. I shrugged. It's what you deserve. 6 months later, we opened the second Bella's. 3 months after that, a third. On my 42nd birthday, Elena named me as a 30% partner in Bella's restaurant group. You earned it, she said. I couldn't have done this without you, and honestly, I'm tired. I want to spend more time with Leah and our adopted children. You're younger, ambitious, and you have vision. Over the next 10 years, we expanded to 12 locations. By 47, Elena had transferred most ownership to me as she moved toward retirement. I became the face of the company, handling everything from menu development to marketing. The shy, awkward girl I once was had vanished. In her place stood a competent, successful businesswoman. I bought a luxury house in the best neighborhood, modern, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the skyline. My car was a sleek Mercedes. My bank account had more zeros than I'd ever imagined possible. At 52, I was profiled in the Wall Street Journal as one of the 50 most influential women in business. The only thing unchanged was my relationship with my family. zero contact for over 2 decades. So when that letter arrived, I was genuinely shocked. A family reunion at Michael's house? The right thing to do to invite me? My assistant had compiled a report. Michael's thriving auto parts business was nearly bankrupt. He'd been through a divorce, had a 17-year-old daughter named Amy, and was behind on child support. My father had heart problems requiring expensive medication. My mother had suffered a stroke last year. It all made perfect sense now. After thinking about it for a day, I decided to reply. "I'll be there," was all I wrote back. The reunion. Arrival. The day of the reunion arrived with perfect spring weather. I chose an understated but expensive outfit, dark trousers, a silk blouse, and a cashmere cardigan. My only concession to luxury was my watch, a subtle Cartier that cost more than Michael probably made in 3 months. I checked my reflection in the mirror. At 52, I looked nothing like the shy girl who had left home 2 decades ago. My hair was styled in a sleek silver streaked bob, my posture confident, my eyes clear and focused. Instead of driving my Mercedes, I called a taxi. I'd arrive like a guest, not someone trying to show off. The ride to Michael's neighborhood took about 30 minutes, during which I rehearsed potential conversations in my head. Michael's house was average, a typical suburban two-story in a middle-class neighborhood. Nothing special. I knew without vanity that my home was at least twice as impressive, but I pushed that thought aside. I wasn't here to compare houses. I rang the doorbell. After a moment, the door swung open, and my mother stood there, wearing an apron and holding a serving spoon. She stared at me blankly for a full 5 seconds before recognition dawned. "Alice? Is that you?" Carol Lawrence had aged considerably. Her once vibrant red hair, the same shade I'd inherited, was now completely gray, her face lined with wrinkles that spoke of stress more than laughter. "Hello, Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My goodness, look at you." She seemed genuinely surprised, as if she'd expected me to show up in a waitress uniform. "Come in, come in. Everyone's already here." I stepped into the house, immediately surrounded by the familiar cacophony of a family gathering. The living room and dining room were crowded with relatives. My father was chatting with Uncle Steve by the fireplace. Michael was holding court in the center of the room, gesturing with a beer in his hand while a group of cousins laughed at whatever he was saying. He gained weight, his once athletic frame now soft around the middle. His hairline had receded, and what remained was heavily salted with gray. But his smile was the same, that charming, confident smile that had always won everyone over. As I entered, conversations paused, heads turned, eyes widened. "Is that little Alice?" Aunt Martha stage whispered. "She looks different," someone else murmured. I nodded politely to everyone but didn't rush to greet anyone specifically. Let them come to me, I thought. My cousin Jennifer leaned toward her husband and whispered something. I caught the words, waitress, and self-important. I pretended not to hear, but inwardly I smiled. They still thought I was a server, and a failing one at that. "Alice is here," my mother announced unnecessarily. "Isn't this wonderful? The whole family together again." My father came over and gave me an awkward side hug. "Good to see you, kiddo. It's been too long." John Lawrence looked frail, his once imposing frame diminished. "Yes, it has," I agreed, not pointing out that the phone works both ways. Michael finally noticed me and sauntered over, still the center of attention even while approaching me. Well, well, he said, giving me an exaggerated once-over. "If it isn't my little sister, finally decided the family's good enough for you again." "Hello, Michael," I said calmly. "Congratulations on the house." He seemed taken aback by my composure, but recovered quickly. "Thanks. Just a starter home, you know. I'm planning to upgrade it in a year or two when the business really takes off." As we made small talk, I scanned the room for the person I was most curious about, my niece Amy. I spotted her in a corner, a slim teenager with her father's dark hair but none of his boisterous confidence. She was watching the proceedings with what looked like detached disdain, a book half hidden in her lap. She reminded me so much of myself at that age that it was almost painful. The dinner, revelations, We all moved to the dining room where a long table was set with mismatched plates and silverware. Michael took the seat at the head of the table with our parents on either side. I was directed to a seat at the very end, next to a second cousin I barely remembered and across from Amy, who had been forced to put her book away. She glanced up at me with mild curiosity, but said nothing. The meal began with toasts, primarily directed at Michael. My father stood first, raising his glass with a slightly trembling hand. To my son, who has made us so proud. From the star quarterback in high school to the successful businessman he is today, Michael has never disappointed us. Everyone clapped. My mother went next. Michael has always been special, she gushed. His auto parts business is thriving, and now this beautiful home. We couldn't be prouder. More applause. Uncle Steve stood and added his own praise. The toast continued, each more effusive than the last. Michael soaked it all in, his chest visibly swelling with each compliment. Eventually, he seemed to remember I was there. He looked down the length of the table at me, a slight smirk on his face. What about you, Alice? Want to say something? All eyes turned to me. I set down my fork, ready to offer a simple congratulation, but Michael cut me off. Still waiting tables, sis? Or have you been promoted to dishwasher by now? The table erupted in laughter. I heard Aunt Martha snicker. Imagine still being a waitress at her age. She whispered to Uncle Steve, loud enough for everyone to hear. 22 years ago, I would have blushed furiously, possibly even cried. I might have made an excuse and fled the table. But not today. Today, I laughed, a genuine laugh that startled everyone into silence. What's so funny? My mother asked, looking confused. I smiled at her. It's funny that after 22 years of not being in touch, none of you know anything about my life, not a single thing. Yet you all feel comfortable making assumptions. The table went quiet. I was about to reach into my purse for my business card when Amy surprised everyone by speaking up. I know who you are, she said, her voice clear and confident despite her withdrawn demeanor. You're Alice Lawrence, owner of Bella's Restaurant Group. You were in the Wall Street Journal last month. From dishwasher to restaurant mogul. The Alice Lawrence story. She pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and turned it around to show a digital copy of the article, complete with my photograph. The silence that followed was absolute. Michael's face drained of color as he stared at the screen, then at me. You own restaurants? My father managed, his voice faint. I took a sip of water before answering. Yes, I own 80% of a restaurant chain with 12 locations across the state. We're planning to expand nationally next year. You're a restaurant owner? My mother finally spoke, her voice hollow. Owner and CEO, I corrected. Started as a dishwasher, became manager, then business partner. Elena, my mentor, retired 5 years ago and transferred most of her shares to me. We've been profiled in Restaurant Business Monthly several times. Michael was staring at me as if I'd grown a second head. My house in Chicago overlooks the lake, I added casually, then deliberately went back to eating my salad. My parents exchanged glances then, as if someone had flipped a switch. My mother's face transformed into a beaming smile. Alice, why didn't you tell us about your success? We're so proud of you. I chewed slowly, swallowed, and dabbed my mouth with a napkin before answering. You could have asked about my life at any point in the last 22 years. But you didn't. Not once. The table fell silent after my statement. My mother's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. Well, we're learning about it now, aren't we? And we're thrilled. Isn't that right, everyone? Suddenly, relatives who had been mocking me minutes earlier were falling over themselves to show interest in my life. Tell us about your restaurants, Alice. How many employees do you have? Are you on one of those cooking shows? Michael sat at the head of the table, sullen and quiet, the forgotten center of attention. My father kept glancing between us, as if trying to reconcile the successful woman before him with the daughter he'd written off years ago. I answered their questions politely but briefly. As the conversation continued, my mother steered it toward her health problems. I had a stroke last year, she said, touching my arm. The doctors say I need to take it easy. but it's hard when we're helping Michael with Amy and trying to manage on a retirement income. The real agenda was becoming clearer by the minute. Dad's heart medication is so expensive, she continued. And with Michael going through such a difficult time with his business. I caught Amy rolling her eyes. Clearly, she'd heard this routine before. What exactly does your father need? I asked, my voice neutral. My mother's eyes lit up at what she perceived as interest. Oh, there's a new treatment that could really help his condition, but insurance won't cover it. It's about $3,000 a month. I see, I said. And Michael's business problems? Michael straightened, seeing an opportunity. Just a temporary cash flow issue. I need about $250,000 to expand the business. It's a guaranteed return on investment. I've got plans drawn up and everything. I nodded thoughtfully. And the mortgage payments you've missed on this house? The room went silent again. Michael's face flushed red. How did you? Public records, I said simply. After about 15 minutes of this uncomfortable dynamic, I checked my watch and stood up. I should be going. I have an early meeting tomorrow. But you just got here. My mother protested. We have so much catching up to do. 22 years worth, I agreed. But I don't think we'll manage that in one evening. As I gathered my purse, my parents followed me to the door, with several other relatives trailing behind. Michael remained seated, staring at his plate. It was wonderful to see you, Alice, my mother said, suddenly warm and affectionate. We've missed you so much. I smiled, not unkindly, but without warmth. Have you? She blinked, taken aback. Of course we have. You're our daughter. Interesting, because when I called you that Christmas and asked if I could join the family celebration, you told me no one wanted me there. She had the grace to look embarrassed. That was a misunderstanding. Was it? I asked. Or is it that you suddenly want a relationship now that you know I'm successful? Alice, that's not fair. My father interjected. No, it wasn't fair, I agreed. None of it was fair. But that's in the past now. I walked out the door, hearing my mother call after me. We want to make things right, Alice. We want to be a family again. I didn't respond. As I reached the sidewalk, I heard footsteps behind me and turned to find Amy hurrying after me. Aunt Alice, she said, slightly out of breath. Can I talk to you sometime? Not here. Not with them around. I looked at her, really looked at her. In her eyes, I saw the same loneliness, the same yearning for recognition that I carried for years. Of course, I said, handing her my business card. Call me anytime. She pocketed it quickly, like it was contraband. Thanks. And that was amazing in there. The look on Dad's face when he realized. For the first time that evening, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. Keep in touch, Amy. I will, she promised, then glanced back at the house. I should go before they notice I'm gone. Aftermath. The true family. When I walked through the front door of my home, I kicked off my shoes and laughed, really laughed, loud and free until tears came to my eyes. The looks on their faces when Amy revealed my success, the shock, the disbelief, and then the immediate pivot to claiming me again once they realized I was successful. It was all so predictable, yet seeing it play out was still somehow surprising. The next morning, I woke up to 23 text messages and 7 missed calls. 5 texts from my mother, 6 from my father, 2 from Michael, and the rest from various aunts, uncles, and cousins. There was also a single message from Amy. Can we meet sometime? Just to talk. I replied to her immediately, suggesting coffee that weekend. The rest I left unanswered. This pattern continued for nearly a week. My phone constantly lit up with notifications from family members who hadn't bothered to contact me in 2 decades. I ignored most of them, focusing instead on work. We were in negotiations to open 3 new locations in neighboring states. On the 6th day, during a rare quiet moment at home, I decided to answer one call, just to end the barrage. It was my mother. Alice, she exclaimed when I picked up. Finally. Why don't you come over for dinner this Sunday? Just you, me, your father, and Michael. A chance to reconnect. I don't think that's a good idea, I replied. But we're family. She insisted. We love you, Alice. We always have. If you love me, I said slowly, why didn't you call me once in 22 years? Why didn't you ask how I was doing or if I needed anything? Why did you tell me no one wanted me at Christmas? There was a pause. How can you be so ungrateful? She snapped, her sweet facade cracking. After everything we did for you, what exactly did you do for me? I interrupted. You didn't pay for my education. You didn't support my career. You didn't even call to check if I was alive. Yes, you raised me, and then you decided I wasn't worth your time anymore. Now you've decided I am again, but it's too late. I hung up before she could respond. I felt oddly calm, as if a weight had been lifted. The next morning, an official-looking envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a letter from my parents' lawyer, laying out their financial situation and suggesting that, as a successful daughter, I had a moral obligation to assist them with medical bills and living expenses. I handed it to my company's legal department with instructions to draft a polite but firm decline. Michael was next. His text became increasingly desperate, culminating in a lengthy message asking for a business loan to help save his auto parts store. He needed $250,000, he said. He'd pay me back, of course, with interest. He attached a crude business plan that looked like it had been thrown together in an hour. I waited until he'd sent a follow-up. Did you get my message? Text before responding with a single word. No. Then I blocked his number. That Saturday, I met Amy at a quiet cafe downtown. She arrived punctually, dressed in a simple sweater and jeans, her long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I wasn't sure you would. Why wouldn't I? I asked. She shrugged. Dad always said you abandoned the family because you were selfish. I nodded, unsurprised. And what do you think? I think there must be more to it, she said, stirring her coffee. Nobody just cuts off their entire family for no reason. Over the next hour, she told me about her life, her parents' divorce, her father's erratic behavior, the pressure from her grandparents to be the good Lawrence, unlike her wayward aunt. She was bright, articulate, and clearly suffocating under the weight of family expectations. I got into Columbia, she confided. Full scholarship for computer science. But Dad and Grandma say I should stay local. That family is more important than career. The parallel to my own experience was so stark it took my breath away. What do you want? I asked. I want to go, she said without hesitation. I want to build something for myself, like you did. I smiled. Then go. Don't let them clip your wings before you've even had a chance to fly. How did you do it? She asked, leaning forward. How did you get away and survive? I took a deep breath, considering my answer carefully. This young woman wasn't just another teenager. She was me, 2 decades ago, standing at the same crossroads. One step at a time, I said finally. I found someone who believed in me when no one else did. Elena Garcia saw something in me that I couldn't even see in myself. But more importantly, I decided that my worth wasn't determined by their approval. Amy nodded slowly, absorbing my words. The hardest part wasn't leaving, I continued. It was letting go of the hope that they would ever see me, truly see me. Once I accepted that, I could focus on building my own life instead of trying to earn their love. I'm afraid, Amy admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. What if I fail? You might, I said honestly. I failed plenty of times. But failure with freedom is better than suffocation with security. When we parted, I gave her my private cell number. Call me anytime. For anything. Thank you, she said, hugging me tightly. For showing me it's possible to escape without breaking. 2 weeks after the reunion, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up Michael's social media page. He'd written a long, self-pitying post about selfish family members who forget where they came from and how some people let success go to their heads. The comments section was filled with sympathetic responses from relatives, all of them rallying around poor Michael, all of them calling me ungrateful and selfish. I should have been hurt, but instead, I found myself laughing again. They hadn't changed at all. They were still the same small-minded, judgmental people they'd always been. The only difference was that now I could see it clearly, without the desperate need for their approval clouding my vision. I closed the browser and turned my attention to the business proposal on my desk. Elena and I were considering opening a culinary school next to our flagship restaurant, a way to train future chefs and managers while giving back to the community. A month later, Amy called me, excited and a little scared. "I accepted Columbia's offer," she said. Dad exploded. Grandma cried. "They're giving me the silent treatment now. How do you feel?" I asked, terrified, exhilarated. She paused. "Free." I smiled, recognizing the emotion in her voice. "That feeling? Hold on to it. It gets even better." The next day, as I was heading into a meeting, my assistant handed me a note. "Your mother called the office 3 times. She says it's urgent, something about your father's health." I considered for a moment. "Send flowers to the hospital if he's actually ill. Otherwise, block the number," I said finally, "and any other numbers associated with my family except Amy's. I'm focused on the future now, not the past." She nodded, no questions asked, and I walked into the boardroom, feeling lighter than I had in years. The family reunion had given me something valuable after all, not reconciliation, but resolution. I no longer had to wonder if walking away had been the right choice. I no longer had to question whether my family might have changed or if they truly cared about me. They had shown me exactly who they were, and I had shown myself exactly who I had become. Someone strong enough to recognize toxic relationships, brave enough to establish boundaries, and wise enough to know when to close a door permanently. But perhaps most importantly, I found a way to break the cycle. Through Amy, I could help ensure that another young woman wouldn't have to endure what I did, wouldn't have to build herself from scratch after being torn down by the people who should have supported her most. That night, I called Elena. "I've been thinking about that culinary school idea we discussed. I want to build something that gives others the chance you gave me. In the end, that's what family should do. Lift you up, not hold you down." I'd lost my first family, but I'd built a better one, and now that circle would include a niece who deserved the support I never had. Sometimes the most profound revenge isn't in making others recognize what they've lost, but in realizing what you've gained without them.